Ukraine's breakthrough in Kursk raised the mood among Ukrainians in August, but did not do much, if anything, to prevent the Russian offensive tempo in Donbas. The Ukrainian army has struggled so mightily in the Pokrovsk sector in August that there are rumblings about the potential collapse of the AFU front there. In this video on the war in Ukraine, we will discuss the Russian success in this sector, the situation on the Kursk front, and all other important updates from this war in the second half of August. This week, our YouTube members and patrons will continue watching our series on the North African campaign during World War II, as we cover Operation Crusader, during which Rommel faced the Allies once again. The support of our YouTube members and patrons allows us to continue releasing these free videos without worrying about unstable YouTube ad revenue and lets us be more choosy in terms of our sponsors. You can join their ranks via the links in the description and get access to 2 weekly exclusive videos, more than 150 right now, including the series on the Pacific War, Fall of Sparta, First and Second Punic War, Russian Revolutions and the Civil War, Italian Reunification Wars, Albigensian Crusade, History of Prussia, Biography of Sulla, Iberian Reconquista, the World War II North African Campaign, the Persian Wars, and much more. Thanks for your kind support. Let's start this update with perhaps the most consequential sector of the battlefield right now, the Pokrovsk sector. As a reminder, Pokrovsk is a crucial logistics hub for the Ukrainian defense in Donbas. It is one of the 2 railway hubs under the AFU's control in Donbas right now. To put it in the simplest terms, supplies and equipment are brought via railways to logistical hubs and then transported to the front lines by vehicles via highways and roads. Kramatorsk is still quite far from the Russian army, so there is no immediate threat to the Ukrainian logistics in North Donbas. Pokrovsk is responsible for the Ukrainian logistics in South Donbas. Losing this city would not necessarily mean the collapse of all logistics in this area, but it is going to take longer to supply this front at the very least. And judging by the speed of the Russian advance in August, the Battle of Pokrovsk may start very soon. At this point, the Russian 15th, 30th, 137th and Vostok brigades, the 288th Artillery Brigade and the 90th Tank Division, along with several other smaller units, are advancing on Pokrovsk from 3 axes. In the second half of August, the situation of the Ukrainian army on each of these axes hastily deteriorated. The Russian army captured Novotoretsk, Novozhelena, Zavitna, Skuchna, Mezhova, Komishivka, Peticha and Mykolaievka, among other villages. In the north, the Russian army advanced along the Kazeni-Terets River to threaten Radivka from the north, along with approaching from the south, capturing Kruty Yar, making advances in Krasny Yar and attacking Radivka directly. Here, the 151st Ukrainian Brigade looks outnumbered, being assaulted from several directions. In the south, the Russians forced a quick retreat of the 68th Jaeger Brigade and the 25th Air Assault Brigade, which withdrew under the threat of encirclement, losing several villages in the process. Now battles are going on in Selidove. Here too, the Russians are attacking from Mykolaievka and from the north of Selidove, and it looks doubtful that the undermanned AFU brigades will be capable of holding on for much longer. Pro-Ukrainian commentators had some hopes for the success of the defense against the central Russian axis, attacking Novorodivka, since this town had quite strong defensive positions, several strongholds, and a line of trenches. But the 47th Brigade has seemingly retreated from Novorodivka without a fight. In general, the aerial footage of recently captured towns and villages in the Pokrovsk sector shows that they have not been destroyed nearly as much as places like Bakhmut or Avdiivka, which the Ukrainians defended for months. This indicates that the Russians did not have to use too much artillery or glide bombs to capture them. Indeed, the Ukrainian withdrawal was so fast and unexpected that the Russian military bloggers have even suspected an intricate tactic of the Ukrainian command to lure them in and catch them by surprise from the northern and southern flanks. That would be a dream scenario for Ukraine. However, the more realistic explanation is that the Ukrainian army's manpower shortage is worse than many had thought, leading to a collapse of the Ukrainian defenses in the Pokrovsk sector. The Ukrainian media outlet Telegraph reported, citing its sources in the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, that the AFU reserves have experienced a 2.5-fold increase since the adoption of the mobilization bill in May, in comparison with the first quarter of 2024. So the army's manpower shortage should not be that bad. The Azov spokesman, Roman Ponomarenko, stated that the crisis in Donbas was caused by disorganization of the defense and tired and demoralized troops. He claims that the arrival of the mobilized is not helping the defense. On the contrary, it makes it more difficult, probably due to a lack of training and morale issues. Other commentators have blamed the poor coordination of rotation between units in the Pokrovsk sector for the recent setbacks. Ukraine still has several brigades in reserve here, and perhaps the deployment of more battle-hardened and trained units may change the situation. For now, the situation looks dire, as with the current rate of advance, the Russians may reach Pokrovsk in a matter of weeks, if not days. The Ukrainian command may decide to make a stand on the outskirts of Pokrovsk itself as the most realistic option of preventing the collapse of this sector. Elsewhere in Donbas, Russian progress has been more modest. In the Turgetsk sector, the Russians have completed the capture of Zalizna and New York, along with making small advances inside Turgetsk. In Chasiv Yar, they have reportedly finally managed to gain a foothold across the canal. It is not entirely clear if the Russian army now has a permanent presence beyond the canal, which is one of the critical defensive barriers of the Ukrainian army in this town. Still, if they do, this spells further problems for the AFU's hold over Chasiv Yar. The Russians have also captured Konstantinivka and advanced on Vodiana, which means that Ukraine's control over Vuhledar is becoming tenuous due to supply issues. Around Vuhledar, the Ukrainians have also fallen back from Pavlivka. In the Kupiansk sector, the Russians claimed to have occupied Sinkivka in August after almost a year of fighting for this village. Meanwhile, Russia has been scrambling to bring reinforcements to stabilize the Kursk front. One of the goals of the Kursk offensive was to force the Russian command to redeploy units from Ukraine in order to weaken Russia's offensive potential, particularly in the Pokrovsk sector. However, even though some troops have been sent from Ukraine to stabilize the situation in the Kursk Oblast, Russia has avoided weakening its Pokrovsk force too much. And it looks like after the rapid advance of the Ukrainian forces in the early days of the offensive, the Russians have managed to stabilize this front. Initially, small Ukrainian units were capable of slicing through undermanned Russian defenses in the Kursk Oblast, making the front line extremely fluid. But in the second half of August, the situation has become more stable. The fighting is still going on in three main sectors. One is in and around Korenevo, particularly to the east of this town. The Ukrainian goal here is to reach the logistics hub of Rilsk. Another sector is the east of Sudzha. This town is the biggest capture of the Ukrainian army so far in the Kursk offensive, and they've been trying to expand the area of control around it to the east and northeast along the R200 highway. The third sector of battles is along the 38K O24 highway, where the Ukrainians have advanced north to the vicinity of Kalchuk and Kromsky-Biki. The presumed ultimate goal of this axis is Ligov, lying on the E38 highway. The AFU has achieved minor progress on all three axes in the second half of August, but at this point they would need more men and firepower to achieve any meaningful breakthrough in the Kursk Oblast, where the Russians may already have a manpower advantage. The area where the Ukrainian army is most likely to achieve success is south of the river Seym. This area is connected to the rest of the Kursk Oblast via three bridges in the Glishkovo area. All three bridges have been destroyed by HIMARS and FPV drones. The Russians are trying to solve this problem by installing pontoon bridges, but we've seen several videos of the destruction of these pontoon bridges too. Sooner or later, the Russian grouping south of the Seym, which is estimated to have anywhere from several hundred to 2,000 to 3,000 Russian soldiers, will face supply problems. They will either have to find a way to withdraw or face an uneven battle with better equipped AFU units. While the end goal of the Ukrainian Kursk offensive is still not entirely clear, we can deduce some things from the statements of Ukrainian leaders and the events on the ground. Zelensky has stated that the Kursk offensive is part of a larger military, political and military diplomatic operation. That likely means that by capturing some Russian land, Zelensky wants to ensure a stronger diplomatic position in future negotiations. It also means that Ukraine wants to destabilize the situation in Russia and damage Putin's reputation as a guarantor of stability and protector of Russia. We will soon see how successful Ukraine has been in achieving these targets. Zelensky also claimed that by launching the Kursk offensive, Ukraine prevented the Russian offensive on Sumy. There have been rumblings about Russia's intention to attack Sumy, but it is impossible to verify whether the Ukrainian Kursk offensive has indeed prevented an attack on Sumy. But it is also quite clear that Ukraine's goal of diverting Russia's attention from attacking to defending has failed so far. Russia is still advancing, particularly in Donbas. One of the factors continuing to hinder Ukraine's military capability is the American prohibition on the use of ATACMS long-range missiles on military targets in Russia. An unnamed Biden administration official was quoted saying that Western long-range missiles would not be effective against Russia because Russia has already moved its military aircraft away from their range. Earlier, it was reported that Britain does not mind Ukraine using its Storm Shadow missiles to hit targets on Russian soil, but the Western media is now claiming that the United States is pressuring London to not allow this. According to the Financial Times, Britain relies on American intelligence to identify Storm Shadow targets. Thus, Ukraine needs the Americans to be on board with this in order to use Storm Shadow missiles on Russian targets. So far, the Biden administration has not budged from its position in fear of escalation of the war. But Ukraine is working to ensure absolute independence in this matter from its Western allies. Zelensky announced the development of Ukraine-made Palianitsia long-range missiles/drones, which is marketed as Kyiv's answer to Russia's Iskander ballistic missiles. The specifications of Palianitsia have not been made public, but sources report about a range of 500 to 700 kilometers and a 50-kilogram warhead. Ukraine has already reportedly used this missile, and if they can achieve its mass production, it would be a massive boost to the AFU's offensive and defensive potential. But even before Palianitsa, and even without permission to use ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles on targets in Russia, Ukraine struck a very important target in Rostov Oblast. On August 18th, a Ukrainian drone hit an oil depot in Proletarsk, which reportedly served an important role in fuel supplies of the Russian invasion army. This strike caused a massive fire, which the Russian firefighters managed to extinguish only 13 days later. But on August 26th, Russia made a massive round of long-range strikes on Ukraine, the biggest so far in this war. This was done in retaliation for the Kursk offensive. Forbes claims that Russia spent $1.2 to $1.3 billion in this strike, using hundreds of missiles and drones. Infrastructure objects, particularly the energy grid in 15 Ukrainian oblasts, were damaged by this Russian attack. The Ukrainians used F-16 fighter jets in air defense capacity during this attack, but one of the jets was confirmed to be destroyed in unclear circumstances. On August 30th, Zelensky dismissed the commander of the Ukrainian Air Force, which is most likely linked to the loss of an F-16. The Kursk offensive has reportedly already had an impact on potential talks between the warring sides. The Washington Post and Le Monde report that in early August, Ukraine and Russia held talks in Doha, Qatar, where they agreed to stop striking each other's energy grid. Russia then reportedly backed off from the agreement after the start of the Kursk offensive and refused to hold another meeting. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Maria Zakharova has already denied this claim. And while Ukraine is fighting a brutal war with Russia, they have to continue dedicating thousands of troops to its border with another neighbor, Belarus. Remember, the offensive in the first days of the war on Kyiv was launched from Belarus. Now Belarus is reportedly concentrating troops, tanks and other military equipment in the Homyel Oblast, including the Wagner mercenaries who relocated to Belarus after Prigozhin's failed coup. Ukraine warned Belarus against any tragic mistakes on August 25th. However, it is doubtful that Belarus's President Lukashenko would suddenly decide to attack Ukraine after refusing Putin's persuasions to do this for more than 2 years. Finally, the second half of August was not rich with news and declarations of foreign military aid to Ukraine. The German media reported about the German government's intention to halve the Ukraine military aid budget to just €4 billion in 2025, in the quest to make some budgetary savings. The Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs denied this report, while the German Chancellor Scholz assured Kyiv that they would continue supporting Ukraine. Any cut to the German military aid budget would be a major problem for Ukraine, as Germany remains the second largest donor to the Ukrainian military. And the largest donor, the US, has announced another military assistance package worth $125 million, which includes HIMARS ammunition, artillery shells, Javelin and AT-4 anti-tank guns, among other supplies. Along with that, Denmark has announced a military aid package worth $115 million. The Netherlands pledged 51 drone-detecting radars, while Norway stated that it will fund the production of 155mm shells in Ukraine. All these pledges happen while the Ukrainian government continues complaining about the slowness of promised deliveries. They are currently facing a very threatening situation in Donbas. Some of it has been caused by the lateness of Western deliveries and extreme caution and slowness of Ukraine's Western allies, but some of it is due to the unwillingness of the Ukrainian government to make unpopular decisions, such as mobilization, in a timely manner. We will see in the near future if Ukraine manages to stop the Russian advance in Donbas. For now, let's look at the visually documented equipment losses suffered by both sides in this war, according to the Oryx blog. As of August 30th, Russia has lost at least 3,345 tanks, 7,661 vehicles, 286 command posts and communication stations, 1,353 artillery systems and vehicles, 410 multiple rocket launchers, 127 aircraft and 144 helicopters. Ukraine has lost at least 907 tanks, 2,868 vehicles, 20 command posts and communication stations, 636 artillery systems and vehicles, 78 multiple rocket launchers, 99 aircraft and 48 helicopters. Further updates on the war in Ukraine are on the way. To make sure you don't miss them, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.